Hi, it's me again. How do I know if you really have your beep together at your school, financially, as a business person? Some of the numbers I'd ask you are as follows. Tell me your total number of inquiries per day. Then tell me your week totals, your month, your quarter, half a year, and year to date. If you know your number of inquiries, it's very revealing because we know how much each inquiry has cost you based on your total money spent for advertising. And I can help you calculate your conversion rate from an inquiry to a student. And if it's below a certain number, we know exactly where we need to work. And a lot of people don't track their inquiries, and so they're flying the ship blind. I'm going to ask you for your acts of marketing. How many acts of marketing do you do every day? Do you keep track? You know, there's no school that I work with that suffers from doing too much marketing. As far as the last bit of numbers, for today anyway, when I ask you how many students you have certain numbers that you can tap into. Like some of you will quote your number of students signed up since Adam ate the apple, like 9,000 students, and that's how many people you saw when you went to the 49ers game. But what I want to know is I wanted you to be able to tell me how many students that actually attended in the last week and how many attended in the last 2 weeks. Those are your real students. That's your real student body. Then I'm going to ask you, well, how many students do you have that are 2 weeks plus? And in the 2 weeks plus, while some of them may be hardcore students who are on vacation or black belts who are missing some time, we can just assume that those students are on their way out the door. So when I ask you for your total 1 week student count, that tells me how many people actually walked through your door in the last week. Everybody else at risk, or so we assume. Then I want to know exactly how many students are in your dead file. Because one of the most interesting things to do is take every student in the dead file and multiply them times $3,000. Because it's them and the 2 referrals they didn't give you over the course of a year's time. 2 referrals in a year seems reasonable. It's about 3,000. Some of you might apply a bigger number to that. When you start doing that with a dead file, it hits you in the head like a little hammer as to how much those lost students are costing you. I'd like to know that number. Then I'd like to know how many white belts do you have, how many of the next belt, how many of the next belt, how many of the next belt, and so on. Because that number always reveals something interesting about where your curriculum isn't doing what it ought to do, or where your people are falling short. Those are the numbers. Why don't you just post them below here on the form, and we'll see where you're doing. Never be afraid of your numbers any more than you'd be afraid of going out on the floor and practicing your jiu-jitsu, your karate, or Muay Thai, whatever. Of course you're not Bruce Lee, but you're never going to get better if you don't practice and just openly go out there and do your best, knowing that you're out to improve. Same thing with your numbers. Post your numbers, do it constantly in our private group, and it'll just make you better. And it'll reveal where your holes are, and once you decide where your trouble spots are, it's easier to focus in on those, yeah?